Imagine you're walking through a savanna, and in the distance, you spot a giraffe. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? Now imagine that this giraffe, instead of calmly munching on leaves, unfolds a monumental pair of wings, runs a few meters, and simply takes flight, disappearing into the clouds. It sounds like a scene from a sci-fi movie, but this was the reality of our planet 66 million years ago. Today, we're diving into the biology of the greatest flying machine nature ever dared to put in the sky, Quetzalcoatlus northropi.
To start understanding the sheer size of this beast, we need to break the first rule we have in our heads about flying animals. Usually, when we think of something that flies, we imagine something small, light, and covered in feathers. But Quetzalcoatlus threw that manual in the trash. It was an Azdarchid pterosaur, a group specialized in long necks and proportions that seemed to defy the laws of physics. When it was on the ground, it adopted a four-legged posture, walking in a way that we would consider bizarre today, but was incredibly efficient. Its total height reached an impressive 5.5 meters. This means that if it were standing right next to you, it could look an adult male giraffe directly in the eye. We're talking about an animal the height of a two-story building, standing right there, breathing in front of you. Unlike common reptiles, it didn't have scales. It was covered in pycnofibers, structures that resemble hair, indicating it was warm-blooded with a high metabolism to sustain such a massive frame. But here's the genius move of biology. Despite having the stature of a giraffe, it weighed only a fraction of one. While a giraffe can easily exceed a ton, the estimated weight of our flying giant was only 200 to 250 kilograms. That's about the weight of a mid-sized motorcycle. How did nature pull off this miracle? Through bone engineering that shames any modern aircraft manufacturer. Its bones were hollow, filled with air sacs and reinforced internally by lattice-like microstructures called trabeculae. It was as if its skeleton were made of natural carbon fiber, incredibly strong to withstand impact, yet light enough to float on air.
If its height is intimidating, its wingspan is what makes it the absolute record holder. The largest, the greatest being to ever cross the Earth's skies in all of history. When it unfolded its wings, the horizon simply vanished under its shadow. The most rigorous research indicates its wingspan was between 10 and 11 meters, which is already colossal. However, in some historical estimates, based on partial remains, that number was once thought to be a surreal 15 or even 21 meters at maximum scale. To help you visualize this size, let's compare it to a machine we often see at airports, a single-engine plane. The average wingspan of these aircraft is about 12 meters. In other words, Quetzalcoatlus was essentially a biological private aircraft. The glaring difference, of course, is the density. While the single-engine plane is made of aluminum and steel and weighs about 1 ton, 1,000 kilograms, our Pyerosaur weighed only 250 kilograms, the equivalent of just 3 or 4 adult humans. This proportion made it a high-efficiency thermal glider. It didn't need to flap its wings frantically like a little bird. It was a master of saving biological fuel. It used rising air currents to gain altitude and could cover unbelievable distances, between 13,000 and 19,000 kilometers in a single journey of just 1 week. Imagine a creature taking off from one continent and a few days later arriving on the other side of the world without needing a single pit stop for rest. It was, technically, the most efficient traveler the planet has ever seen. One of the greatest mysteries that kept scientists up at night for decades was, how does an animal the size of a giraffe get off the ground? For a long time, it was thought it would need cliffs or incredibly strong winds to take off. But the truth is much more impressive. Evolution's solution was to turn the entire animal into a living catapult. Quetzalcoatlus utilized what we call a quadrupedal launch.
Instead of trying to take off like a modern bird using only its hind legs, it used the massive, powerful muscles of its wings and arms to perform an explosive vault off the ground. In less than a second, it hurled itself into the air, reaching the height necessary for the first wing beat. It's as if it had a hydraulic propulsion system in its front limbs, allowing it to go from a standstill to full flight almost instantaneously. And once in the air, the creature's design was pure advanced aerodynamics. It had almost no tail, which brought it close to the flying wing concept. To stay balanced without a rear rudder, it used millimeter-perfect movements of its neck and wingtips to adjust its flight in real time. This is exactly the same flight control principle used in the most modern bombers, the famous fly-by-wire system, but powered by instinct and biology. It was capable of reaching cruise speeds of 130 kilometers per hour and flying at altitudes of up to 4,500 meters, the same flight ceiling as many small private planes we see today. Now let's talk about what it would be like to come face to face with this monster. Forget the classic image of a pterosaur diving into the sea to fish. Quetzalcoatlus was a land animal, a predator of alluvial plains and river corridors. Science today describes it with a term that sends shivers down your spine: the hell stork. Imagine a modern stork, but on a scale that would make a T-Rex think twice before approaching. It walked on all fours with its 3-meter-long skull, which ended in a toothless beak as sharp and rigid as a spear. Its jaw had a special joint that allowed an opening of over 50 degrees, meaning it could swallow substantial prey whole. It likely spent its days stalking the ground, using its giraffe-like height to spot small dinosaurs, mammals, and lizards, snapping them up with the precision of a giant pair of tweezers. If it lived today, it would be a nightmare for any rural or urban area. Dogs, calves, and even medium-sized animals would be easy prey for an attack from above or a quick ground strike. But despite being an apex predator, it had a critical vulnerability: its glass bones. To be light enough to fly, its bone walls were only a few millimeters thick. In our modern world, power lines, glass buildings, or a collision with a vehicle would be an immediate death sentence. It was a masterpiece of biological engineering, perfect for a world of wide-open spaces, but too fragile for our dense concrete jungle. Quetzalcoatlus northropi is proof that life on Earth has already tested the absolute limits of physics and biology. It was the undisputed king of an era where life reached heights and scales we are still trying to fully comprehend. So, can you imagine the shadow of this 11-meter giant passing over your street, blocking out the sun like a bomber? If you came face to face with one of these in your backyard, would you try to film this miracle of nature, or start running before you became this stork's next snack? Leave your comment down below. I want to know if you think it was scarier flying or walking on the ground. And to keep exploring the greatest titans in history, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. See you next time.